Good evening, Dr. Groves. My name is Ray Bowman, and this is my submission for our Week 6 oral exam for MPA 594, our comprehensive exam seminar. Today, I'll be responding to the 3 questions that comprise our exam, and I've used this background here to tackle each one in order. So the first question asks who my favorite theorist is and why. And there were so many to choose from as each theory kind of expanded on the one before them. And each one really reflected the era that they were developed in. But I would have to say that my favorite theorist is actually Max Weber. And I don't know how popular he is as a favorite theorist, especially because it's common for us to talk about bureaucracy in light of its pitfalls and maybe how inefficient it is or how full of red tape it is. But for me, bureaucratic theory isn't really just a theory, it's actually pretty practical, and it closely aligns with how I operate in public finance. So I think Max Weber is one of the foundational theorists in public administration. He was probably the very first one that we covered in MPA 510. And so I feel like most of what I know about public governance really branched off from his theory on bureaucracy. So for example, Max Weber emphasized division of labor and hierarchy, formal rules, all this documentation. And as someone who works in government finance, that really resonates with me. Finance depends on heavy internal controls, audit trails, authorized signatories, and standardized processes. So the rules and procedures that some might view as red tape are actually kind of the structures that ensure we operate with equal treatment, maintain transparency, and have accountability for the work that we do. Weber essentially gave us the blueprint for modern public governance, and in my role, I really do value that every day because I think that structure and proper documentation ensures we have transparency and, again, accountability. And in finance, there's a lot of reporting that has to happen, especially because certain cities and agencies get funding from a lot of different other governmental agencies. So if we didn't have the structures about documentation and regulations that we operate under, I don't know what I would do. At the same time, I am mindful of the limitations of bureaucracies. And again, its pitfalls. One that I won't forget really is Merton's trained incapacities, because that one also hits close to home because we have kind of this running joke in accounting called SALLY, which means same as last year, where you do the same transactions as last year, same entries as last year. Well, we all know that things aren't always the same as last year, so I am pretty mindful about that. But even given that, I think Max Weber is still my favorite theorist because he really shaped the foundation of public administration as I understand it. So that would be my answer for question number 1. And for question number 2, the question really revolves around motivational theory. And my, I guess the one that I would lean heavily on in terms of public motivation in the public sector is Douglas McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. So knowing that Douglas, McGregor, and Maslow kind of existed at the same time, they were each other's contemporary, makes me kind of think and connect both of their theories about motivation. So for me, the practical application of Theory X and Theory Y is that motivation increases when employees feel like they're trusted to be able to function and work on their own. And I've seen that firsthand in my department when I've given staff the kind of the space and the time to troubleshoot their own kind of challenges at work. I feel like when they have more ownership of their work, they're more invested in the work and they feel kind of prouder about the work product. Not only that, but showing that I trust them helps build their confidence in their abilities. but also knowing that I'm the safety net and I'll try to catch if there's anything that goes wrong. As an offshoot of theory X and theory Y actually is theory Z, which is kind of funny because it's X, Y, and Z, which makes me think of it all together. And it's Ouchi's theory Z, which essentially hinges on this notion of a unifying mission and a unifying culture. And I see that pretty strongly in the organization that I work for. We operate under the 4 core values of humble, hungry, loyal, and smart. And I think that really brings all of the organization together, whether you're police or fire or finance or HR. All of you are evaluated based off of those 4 core values. And I think that creates a lot of kind of, again, that unifying mission, which then in turn creates this kind of great environment for people to work in, to increase retention, to increase motivation. So I think those 3 kind of go hand in hand, X, Y, and Z, if that's okay. And lastly is question number 3, which was the question about kind of the challenges that I foresee in public governments and local governments even in the next 5 years. And I think for me, those challenges are really rooted within the increase of the demands from local governments or from governments in general, while balancing this decrease in the resources that they have. I work in finance, so I automatically think decreasing revenues, increasing public expectations. How do we balance that? So kind of that in essence. And I have a couple of examples. First, in terms of decreasing resources, we all know that recruitment is getting harder. Workforce dynamics are changing. We're seeing retirements. For example, my director is retiring next month. And even though I'm happy for her, I also know that recruiting is tougher, right? Because, especially for entry-level positions, a new generation of the workforce is coming in, and, their expectations of the workforce is different from the previous generation. So they might expect more flexible work arrangements, maybe better job perks that sometimes government agencies just can't provide. So I think organizations have to be creative about what they can offer. As an offshoot to that, and kind of to balance it out, right, your resources and staffing is kind of dwindling, but also funding resources are starting to become more and more limited. It adds a layer of challenges. So cities are expected to keep up with the times, with the increase in technology and AI, improve service delivery, be quicker, be faster, be kind of everywhere at the same time, and meet increasing public demands, and often without the additional resources needed in order to do so. So it's easy to get overwhelmed by this idea of increased demand, decreased resources, but a theory that can be practically applied, for me at least, is Lindblom's incrementalism, essentially found in the science of muddling through, and kind of taking a look at the root versus branch method. So essentially, what I'm looking at is operationalizing the branch method, which is focusing on these small adjustments to affect change instead of the root method, which essentially tries to get to the root of the problem to find this exhaustive solution or one perfect way to approach a problem, which we all know that there's a lot of problems in government organizations that they have to address, especially some are wicked problems, and there's no one best way to address those. But instead, I think making the best decision, given the information that we have at the time, really reflects that incremental approach and that branch kind of method. In addition to that, I think leadership mindset will also be important in these changing times. And there's 3 that come to mind that will be important. So there's situational leadership, because different communities, different agencies, different employees, they require different levels of direction and support. Second is transformational leadership. It's also critical because it keeps people motivated and focused on the mission. And lastly, servant leadership is also super critical. Knowing how to support your team will be important, especially putting other people's needs first is very important. It is essentially the backbone of public service. And with that, that completes my responses for all 3 questions and the oral exam. Thank you so much, Dr. Groves, for your review and for your guidance throughout the MPA program. I look forward to meeting you in just a few days. Thanks again, and have a great day.